Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Islamic Only podcast. So I'm back. I just wanted to tell you guys thanks for all the support because for the last couple of days I was really sick. Now I'm back with new energy. Today, inshallah, I'll be taking a look at a video by Capturing Christianity with the title of Islam's Hidden Secret or something like that.
But what if I told you there's a dark secret Muslim apologists like hijab will never bring it up? Buried deep in Islamic history.
In regards to the Satanic verses.
Are you serious right now, bro?
So let's see what Apostasy has to say in regards to this, and then I'll make my response.
Islam is often presented as the world's simplest and most rational religion. But what if I told you there's a dark secret lurking beneath these claims of simplicity? A secret so unsettling, so deeply buried, that Muslim apologists like hijab will never bring it up.
Oh, scary!
A story of three pagan deities, a prophet, and a shocking revelation.
Oh guys, there's this
deep hidden secret in Islam, guys. Muslims are hiding this information.
You're hiding, boy! You're hiding!
He has this whole kind of like horror music behind him. First of all, there's no like deep dark secret about it. He's talking about the Satanic verses. I mean, Muslims have known about Satanic verses since early Islamic history. I mean, even Taymiyyah talked about the so-called Satanic verses in 13th century. If you search Ahmed Didat and the Satanic verses, you'll see that there's a bunch of videos by Ahmed Didat where he talked about this issue like a decade ago. And then you can also watch Zakir Naik's video, which he did like 5 years ago. You also have a video by Fight Response that was also done 3 years ago before this video came out. And then here this guy is saying that,
Muslims refuse to talk about it. They're trying to hide this information.
When in reality, the Muslims have been discussing this for ages. As a matter of fact, the only reason you know about this information is because our historians were sincere enough to collect this information. I mean, where do you think these stories come from? It comes from our sources.
A secret so deeply buried. Surah 53:19. Have you considered Al-Lat and Al-Uzza and Manat, the third one, the other? And what's even stranger, after the Quran mentions these three pagan deities, Lat, Uzza, and Manat, you might expect an immediate and forceful condemnation, declaring them to be false gods. But that's not what happens. Instead, the very next verse shifts focus entirely. Is the male for you, and for him the female? This verse criticizes the Quraysh for attributing female names to angels, a seemingly unrelated point. Why doesn't the Quran denounce these gods?
Stop the cap!
So he just lied right there. As a matter of fact, the whole verse, if you read it, is debunking their belief. So let me read the verse. So have you considered Al-Lat and Al-Uzza and Amanat, the third one, the other one, the male for you and for him the female? That then is an unjust division. They are not but mere names. You have named them, you and your forefathers, for which Allah has sent down no authority. They follow not except assumption and what their souls desire, and there has already come to them from their Lord guide. We read about this in Quran 53:19-23. So yeah, this is a clear condemnation of these deities, of these pagan gods. Here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is clearly saying that these are just names for you and your forefathers. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala never told you to do this, right? This is a clear denunciation of their gods. So what are you talking about? There's a denunciation. Like, have you bothered to read the verse?
Lat, Uzza, and Manat. These three goddesses are the cornerstone of their worship and identity. For years, Muhammad's denunciation of their gods has only intensified the hostility. The Quraysh gather, skeptical but curious, to hear Muhammad speak. Have you considered Lat and Uzza and Manat, the third, the other? Muhammad continues with words that leave them stunned. These are the exalted cranes whose intercession is to be hoped for. For the first time, Muhammad's words appear to affirm the power and status of the Quraysh's deities. The Quraysh are so moved by this acknowledgement that they prostrate alongside Muhammad. But this triumph is short-lived. Days later, Muhammad shocked his followers and the Quraysh by retracting the verses, claiming that they had not come from Allah, but from Satan. According to Ibn Ishaq, Jibril, known in Islamic tradition as the angel Gabriel, Jibril came to the messenger and said, Muhammad, what have you done? You have recited to the people that which I did not bring to you from God, and you have said that which he did not say to you. Muhammad was absolutely devastated, but he claimed God provided reassurance through another revelation.
Okay, so he puts on this big show, right? This kind of big high budget production, this kind of like highly like tense music, all to kind of like give this idea of this terrible thing that's happened in the Muslim history. You know what's funny is that all this theatric is based on a complete fabrication. Like, this story never happened. Now, the thing is that you don't have to take my word for it. This has been well established in Islamic scholarship. For example, Ibn Kathir, who David Wood considers to be one of the Islam's greatest commentators.
Islam's greatest commentator of all time, Ibn Kathir.
He said in his tafsir, he said, all the links of this tradition are inauthentic, and I found no correct version of this with continuous links. Imam al-Shawkani, who says there is nothing true in it and none of its links is proved. Fath al-Qadir, volume 5. Ibn Zawzi says that this is not correct. But this is Zad al-Musair, volume 4, 391. Ibn Quzama, when he was asked about it, he said this story has been invented by heretics. Read about this in Tafsir al-Razi, 11.4. Bayhaqi said this story has not been proved to be correct by the rules of reporting. Brother Farid actually made a video on it where he basically goes through all the different chains and shows how all of the chains are broken.
Everything you're looking at here is from one single source. Abu al-Aliya, who's a second-generation Muslim that never witnessed the events, and therefore you can't really rely on them.
So basically, the way Islamic historicity works is that you have the Prophet saying something, and someone else writes it down or memorizes it, then he passes it on to his student, then he passes it on to his student, and so on and so forth, right? So the problem with this narration is that if you look at the chain, there's a gap in the chain, and we don't know who relayed this information to one of the persons in the chain, meaning the chain is missing a link. But the point is that there's not a single chain of transmission of this hadith that is authentic. Not a single one. The only authentic narration of this that we have is, I think it's in Bukhari, where basically the story goes that the Prophet ﷺ received revelation and he relayed that to the people and they all prostrated. But that's it. There's no mention of, like, you know, the Satan coming to him and, like, you know, giving him these verses and him relaying this information to the public. Like, there's no mention of this. So clearly this information of, like, him getting this revelation from Satan is a fabrication that came up later, right? Because it didn't exist in the original tradition. So yeah, all this theatrics is basically based on a fabricated story.
Moreover, the verse suggests that this wasn't unique to Muhammad, but had occurred with previous prophets as well. While framed as a reassurance, it inadvertently raises a very troubling question. If Satan could deceive Muhammad once, how could his followers be certain it hadn't happened on other occasions?
Brother asked a very good question.
First of all, this story is fabrication, comes from a weak source. Basically, even if you don't accept our tradition, this basically becomes a hearsay. The hearsay is basically when you accept the testimony of someone who is not an eyewitness to the incident. Imagine a person comes to you and says that when the dinosaurs went extinct, they could speak to each other like human beings, right? Now, would you accept this information? Of course not. But you know what? Let's be charitable. Let's say the story is reliable. The first objection he raised is that, well, if it is the case that, you know, Satan was able to deceive Prophet ﷺ like this, then how can he be trusted ever again, right? You have this exact same problem in your religion as well. One of the most famous example is Adam himself. Adam was deceived by Satan to eat the apple. Right? So if this is the case, that because Prophet ﷺ was deceived by Satan, therefore he's unreliable, then the same logic applies to Adam. So when Adam eats the apple, he's unreliable. You cannot trust him as a prophet. But obviously you're not gonna do that, right? Same thing here. One of the main job of Satan is to deceive people. That's literally what he does. And prophets are human beings, so they can be deceived by Satan. And there are many examples of this in the Bible. And the reason we know that information he relayed later on are authentic is because God himself intervened to protect his religion. And he promised in the Quran that he would protect the Quran from corruption. For example, if you read Quran 59, it says, "Indeed, it is we who send down the message, and indeed we will be its guard." Meaning Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala himself will protect the Quran from corruption. So the Quran can never be corrupted, either by the devil or human beings.
The fallout was immediate. The Quraysh, who had been thrilled by Muhammad's apparent affirmation of their gods, now felt betrayed, and their hostility toward him intensified. Here is our question. Why would devout Muslim historians record this incident? Why include a story so embarrassing, one that casts Muhammad as fallible, even deceived? To answer this, we turn to the groundbreaking work of Shihab Ahmed, a highly respected Muslim scholar whose credentials are impeccable. Ahmed, who taught at Harvard University, dedicated his life to the study of Islamic history and theology. His book, Before Orthodoxy, published by the prestigious Harvard University Press, meticulously examines over 50 early Islamic sources that document the Satanic verses incident. These
If you want to know why Muslim historians collected this information, you don't have to go to Shah Ahmed. You can actually go to Imam Tabari himself, because Imam Tabari, in his introduction, actually explains in explicit detail why he collected information that are not authentic. So let's read what he said.
Hence, if I mention in this book a report about some men of the past, which the reader of listener finds objectionable or worthy of censure, because he can see no aspect of truth nor any factual substance therein, let him know that this is not to be attributed to us, but to those who transmitted it to us, and we have merely passed this on as it has been passed on to us.
This is mentioned by Imam Tabari in Tariq al-Tabari, volume 1, page 172 to 171. The point that Imam Tabari is making is that he collected whatever information he could. That's his job as a historian. He didn't authenticate information because at that time, any piece of Muslim history was important and it could be lost at any moment. So he did a very important job as a historian. He collected all the information he could. Imam Tabari and early historians like him, their job was to simply collect information. However, Hadith scholars and their job is to authenticate information. Hadith scholars read those and see which one is authentic and which one is not.
are accounts written by Islam's critics. They're drawn from within the tradition itself. Again, if this story is false, why would the earliest Muslims invent it? Fabricating such an event would mean creating a narrative that severely undermines Muhammad's credibility, essentially sabotaging their own cause. This is why Ahmed's work is so important. His research highlights a historical principle that's difficult to ignore, the principle of embarrassment. Historians recognize that the more damaging a story is to its subject, the more likely it is to be true. In this story, it's about as damaging as it gets. No Muslim would invent a tale that undermines their own prophet's credibility unless they're grappling with events that actually happened.
So here he also talks about the criteria of embarrassment. But the problem is that it's a non sequitur. Just because something is embarrassing doesn't mean it's true. There are plenty of things that are embarrassing that are not true. Like for example, if the earth is really flat, then it will be very embarrassing the rest of the scientific community. Therefore, the earth is most likely flat. Because otherwise, why would people lie about the earth being flat, right? But it doesn't follow, right? It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't follow. Just because it's embarrassing doesn't mean it's true. But you know what? Let's accept this criteria of embarrassment. Even then, it's not an issue. That's because this incident is not embarrassing for Muslims. You see, because the thing is that we know that devil can manipulate people. So if the devil did manipulate the prophet, there's nothing embarrassing about this. I mean, like, why would that be embarrassing? Like, he already did it to countless other prophets. That's what he does. First of all, Muslims don't have to invent this story. You know, it could be invented by enemies of Muslims, can be invented by the pagans. And pagans have a very good reason to lie about the Muslim. They were their rival, right? It could be invented by the hypocrites. So all of these are a perfect explanation of what happened.
Fascinating is that this wasn't always the case. According to Shehab Ahmed, in Before Orthodoxy, the rejection of the Satanic verses incident is a modern phenomenon. In other words, for the first 200 years of Islam, this incident wasn't just accepted, it was universally recognized by the earliest Muslims as part of Muhammad's life story. It wasn't until centuries later, as Islam expanded and sought to solidify its claims to perfection, that the story became a theological liability.
First of all, there's no evidence that shows that all the early Muslims accepted the story or even know about this story. The only information we find is in Bukhari, but it has no mentions of like any kind of like satanic verses. Whether Muslims accepted it or not is not an issue. Like if Muslims accept it, fine, there's no issue, as I said in this very video. But if they don't accept it, which is the correct position, then there's no issue either. So I don't know like what point he thinks he's making. Now, they're not saying it's weak because they feel like it. They're saying it's weak because the historical method, because the chains are faulty. This has nothing to do with like with the fact that, oh, you know, this creates theological problem. That's why Muslims are rejecting this information. No, that has nothing to do with it. That's nothing to do with it because it doesn't create any theological problems for us. Like even if I accept this information, it's not an issue because prophets can be deceived by Satan. That's some embarrassing thing.
Salam everyone. I want to talk to you guys about something before I end the video. There is a brother in my Discord who opened his own video streaming website like YouTube. He did this because YouTube, for all its benefits, is not very Islam friendly. There are many haram elements on this website. Oftentimes, enemies of Islam, Zionists, and Islamophobes can post whatever they want on this site. So the brother decided to make a website on his own. That'll be Muslim and Islam friendly. He has a GoFundMe. Please consider donating. We Muslims need a platform of our own. So please help him out, so we Muslims don't have to rely on Zionist-friendly companies like Google.
If you guys like the video, don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and inshallah, see you guys next time, inshallah. Jazakallah khair. Assalamu alaikum.